Hello, welcome back to Let's Talk Title with Emerald Coast Title Services. I'm president of ECTS and host Dion Moniz.
And I am Ashley Bowen, licensed title agent and director of operations here at Emerald Coast Title Services.
All right, so today we're going to talk about pre and post occupancy agreements.
I like them. I think that a seller post-closing occupancy agreement is a great option for everybody. It gives the seller time once they have the money in their account to get out.
Yes, because invariably the closing gets bumped a day or two because of lending requirements or whatever.
And it keeps the stress level down.
Yeah, you've got a buyer with all their stuff in a moving van waiting to move in on closing day, and they can't because the closing's been pushed a day or two. So I think these are excellent to allow a little cushion so that closing can happen, seller can get out, buyer can come in, and it's a nice smooth transition.
I think they're great. But there's also another alternative, which is a buyer pre-closing occupancy, and that's a little bit more scary.
Yeah, so let's dig into that one first.
Okay.
Since it's pre.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us about pre-closing occupancy by a buyer.
So in the FAR contract, which is our favorite, it's the standard form, and so that's what we're going to talk about here. It is going to be paragraph 6 is going to be the occupancy and possession. So unless the basically unless the seller has that thing with a tenant occupied and the buyer's aware of it, when you close, the seller is supposed to give the property over vacated.
Yep,
free and clear.
Yep.
Here's the keys. It's broom swept and you're out.
Yep.
But there are some alternatives. If you have a tenant in place, then there's a check that you have to mark, and you've got to provide the lease. Even if it's short-term rentals then that are on the property, then you've got to provide information about that.
Yep.
And then there's also a buyer pre-closing occupancy or the option of a seller post-closing occupancy. Now, the contract states that if the buyer is going to occupy the property pre-closing, then you need to use a writer T. It's the pre-closing occupancy by buyer writer. But it also states that the buyer assumes all risk of loss to the property from the date of occupancy and will be responsible and liable for all maintenance from that date. And will have accepted the property in existing condition at the time that they take closing.
Yeah, which is really good. I mean, that's great for the seller. I mean, it should be that way.
So they can't go in and mess stuff up, and then the seller has to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So buyer gets to move in early, essentially, and but seller is relieved of any further liability from that point forward regarding the property. So it's excellent language. And typically, what we do, if it's our closing, is we have an agreement that goes with the contract. It's a pre-closing occupancy agreement. So
the writer states that they have mutually agreed to a pre-closing occupancy agreement. It used to state that it was a lease. It no longer has to be an actual lease, but it does need to be in writing, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and it's basically a short-term lease. But the agreement that we have, it's always good to have one prepared by a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. We have lawyers on staff, so you get that benefit with these documents. But yes, it has all the language it needs to have. So that combined with the language in the contract, the seller is totally protected. So it's good stuff. It's a great option to have. We've even had pre-closing buyer occupancy agreements that allowed the buyer to go ahead and start renovations on the house. Mm-hmm. And that requires a whole different set of language because
if for some reason... bigger agreement.
Yes, a bigger agreement to address what happens if it doesn't close and the buyer's already started doing renovations on the house. And so, but know that is an option as well. And again, you will want a nice document to cover all that. And we have that. Mm-hmm. So close with ECTS.
Yep, and you'll get all these Dion prepared documents for free.
All right, so we talked about pre-closing occupancy. Now let's dig a little further into post-closing occupancy.
So that one it will require writer U, the post-closing occupancy by seller. It allows for the seller to make monthly rent payments or whatever, just like the pre-closing occupancy by seller. It does say that the seller's repair, replacement, treatment, and remedy obligations under paragraph 12 will extend until they have finished their occupancy, and that they're going to keep it insured for the whole time that they have it occupied.
Yep. And so the agreement that we have that goes along with that, obviously it's called the post-closing occupancy agreement. It kind of mirrors a lot of the terms that are already in the contract, but it goes further, and it's almost like a mini lease.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it protects, at that point, it protects the buyer in case something happens while the seller is occupying the property post-closing. So another good option. Again, it avoids all the stress and headaches of having everything happen right as planned, because nothing ever goes as planned, right?
No. And it is, I do want to mention, it's important to make sure that the property is properly insured during all of this transition. And as a realtor, I think it's a good idea for you to guide them through that. Make sure that the seller has the property properly insured, before the buyer goes and buys it and then lets the seller stay there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great point. And so it doesn't hurt to look at the insurance, at least the deck page, to make sure there are proper coverages in place. So yeah, I like that you brought that up. Okay, anything else regarding pre or post occupancy?
Nope. I think that the contract does a really good job of covering it. It does ask for that additional document that you do need an attorney to prepare. Close with us, and we'll provide that for you.
That's right.
But those are some good options when things aren't happening right as you need to. Say the buyer's loan is being extended, but they need a place to stay, or the seller needs money to get out and needs a little bit more time. So good options.
Exactly. Great options under the contract, so just be aware those are available. And as always, if you have any questions or need more information, reach out to us. We'll be glad to help you with that. Or come and do a class all about it, in addition to all the other stuff in the contract. So anyway, we appreciate you listening and or watching. Please subscribe or like our various social media channels and YouTube stations, or I'm sorry, podcast stations. Yes, YouTube's one of them. I guess until then, we'll see you next time.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.